Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Welcome back to another episode in our debut Spotlight series, where we shine the light on the freshest authors and their work. Today, the spotlight is on Rachel Bauer and her debut novel, It Comes from the River, which is out now and published by Bloomsbury. Rachel is an award-winning writer from Bradford. Her poems and stories have been widely published in literary magazines, including The White Review, Magma, The London Magazine, The Rialto, and more. She's the author of 2 poetry collections, These Mothers of God, published by Fly on the Wall Press, and Moon Milk, published by Valley Press. She's also published a non-fiction book of literary letters called Epistolarity and World Literature, published by Palgrave Macmillan. Rachel won the London Magazine Short Story Prize 2019-20 and the W&A Short Story Competition 2020. She was awarded second place in the Michael Marks Environmental Poet of the Year 2024 and is currently editing an anthology with Simon Armitage, which will be published by Faber and Faber. Here to chat about her debut novel, It Comes from the River, welcome Rachel to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
So to start us off, I will ask you my favourite question, which is, what are you currently reading?
Okay, so I am currently reading a book called Briefly Very Beautiful by Ros Deneen, also a Bloomsbury book, and I'm talking to Ros next week, and it's totally amazing, really stunning. Absolutely
I
stunning.
love that. So as I mentioned in my intro, you've already obviously accomplished a lot through your writing of poetry and non-fiction and stories. So what has the kind of shift towards writing a novel been like for you, and what's this journey into putting your debut novel out into the world been like?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I've always wanted to write a novel since I was really little, and I've always written poems, but I've always written stories, and in a way I feel like it's all kind of just come together in the novel. I wrote loads as a kid, and then I kind of stopped writing a bit in my 20s when I was doing English lit, and I somehow just didn't feel like people who wrote books were people like me. I don't really come from a family of writers. Didn't really know any of the writers growing up really. And then I moved to Sheffield. When I moved to Sheffield about 13 years ago, I just started writing again. The poetry community is so strong. I was sharing poems at open mics and sending them out, and people really liked them. And I was like, oh, I could do this again. And it really freed me up, I think, to start writing again. And then I was writing quite a lot of short stories, which did all right, and that meant that I was really lucky because people started getting in touch with me, agents started getting in touch with me and saying, have you got anything longer form?
That's
And I
amazing.
thought, actually, maybe I could just do maybe I can do this and make this dream come true. So I just did it.
That.
And yeah, I was really lucky. I got an Arts Council Developing Your Creative Practice grant, and that meant I could properly take time out, and it also gave me permission somehow. It made me feel like it's not just a hobby, like I can write this, I can justify the time to actually take time to write. And so I just spent that time writing it, and yeah, did it.
Well, thank God you did. Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's so interesting, you saying that you didn't think it was for somebody like you because, we're both Northern, so I've totally got that. And, I told you before that I'm an actor and I write as well. I'm currently working on my novels, so that's really scary. But I also come from a family of, none of my family are creatives. I didn't know anybody growing up like that. And when I decided to go to uni and study drama and theatre, I didn't know that being an actor would be a possibility because I didn't know anybody in my family that was doing that. I didn't know where you'd start with that. And it's a lot of people that, I don't know if it feels like there's a lot of people that don't come from your background that are doing these things. So how do you kind of push through that? Was it going to those open mic things? Was it, finding that community that sort of made you feel like, yeah, okay, this is doable? Was it finding people that are from similar backgrounds, or was it, having people tell you that your work was great that kind of gave you that boost?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything. I mean, it's tricky, isn't it, when you don't know. I think it's really important that we get kind of a wider range of people
100%.
in publishing, and so that people can see people like them in it. And I do some work. I did some work in school in Leeds not long ago, and a lot of the kids were like, I'm not a poet, and it was connected to a competition, and I was like, it doesn't matter about the competition. What we want is, everyone's got a story, everyone's a poet, everyone's a writer. It's just about kind of telling your story, and I really believe that everyone does have that. For me, I think it was partly being in that community of, open mics are often really positive, so they're not that useful for feedback on your work. I think it's really important to get good critical feedback, but also just that celebration of let's share stories or let's share poems, and I think there's there's something like really ancient about that, and something like to celebrate that's not about like who's the most successful, but just about sharing stories and enjoying that together.
Yeah.
And when I used to read my poems, like people would cry or people would come up to me after and go, wow, no one's ever taught. There was a couple of poems about being a mum that people were like, no one's ever, I've never heard a poem like that before. And I was like, wow, oh, maybe I can do it,
Oh, I
because it
love
actually
that.
connects with readers and connects with people. And the
Yeah.
more I published and the more I got out, the more I felt like I connected with people. And that's what I love about it, really. And I
Hmm.
think that's what's given me, but also just having that encouragement. And I think I was part of this development program called Writers Block Northeast, and also having a mentor through, getting the funding that I could afford, a mentor through the literary consultancy. All of that massively helped
Hmm.
me get to where I am, because just that support and people, kind of being like, you can do it, or getting feedback on your work regularly
Yeah.
really helped me, because it gives you like accountability, but also just got people going, this is good, you can do it, and keep going. So I think that's really important to get, to get a team of people who are supporting you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really glad that you've had that because this beautiful novel's come out of it. And
Mhm.
I absolutely love this book, and I have been telling people how like gripping it was. I felt like I didn't want to kind of go sleep and put it down.
Mhm.
It's such a great book, and you really feel like you're a part of these characters' lives. But I would love it if you could tell the listeners what It Comes From the River is all about.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that. So yeah, It Comes From the River. It's about follows three women of different ages, different generations through their lives. They all could have their own novel. I mean, they've all got their own story, but they're all kind of bonded and linked in some way that becomes clearer as the novel goes on. Don't want to give out too many
No, no, no
spoilers,
spoilers.
but so, and then it's set in like a northern setting, and it's really underpinned by all this like mythology and folklore. So it's kind of dark and creepy at the same time as being quite gritty and realist about these women's lives and the challenges they face. I really wanted it to be about their resilience and
Mm,
about women working together and about hope. So they do have quite difficult times,
yeah.
but it's about them kind of coming through that, and about everyone having a story, I guess, but coming through that and facing all those challenges that
Mm.
we face in
It
our life.
it does have a really northern feel to it as well, which is always
Mm.
really nice to read because
Mm.
you don't see that represented very often, and I think it's kind of difficult to if you are northern. I don't think there's
Mm.
a lot of novels out there that I've come across anyway where I've sort of recognised those characters and been able to visualise those homes that I've been in and be able to be
Mm.
like, okay, yeah, I know what that looks like. I know what kind of person that is.
Yeah.
It's very clear what their lives are like and how
Mm.
they've kind of got to those positions that they're in. What
Yeah.
was it like carving out the individual voices of these three women?
Yeah. No, thanks for before I say that, can I just say about the North? Because that's
Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah.
Please.
Yeah, yeah. No, because I'm really glad you picked up on that northern aspect of it, because it was really important to me to write characters who were not stereotypical northern.
Yeah,
Often,
yeah.
often on TV, and then you get these kind of flat 2D northern characters, and
You're
I just
so
wanted to
right,
write
yeah.
like women who were like complex and northern, but like also fully human, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So their voices, so I guess like writing them and carving out their voices, that northern aspect was part of that. It was really important to me. I guess like coming from poetry as well, voice is really important. And so each of the characters I wanted to have really distinct voices, but they've got even like the rhythm of their speech is different, the rhythm of their sections. There's a younger woman, Lauren, who's on probation, and she's juggling really she struggles with lots of different things, but she
Yeah.
just wants to be a good mum and she just wants to do things properly. And the character in the middle, Alex, she's in like a difficult abusive relationship,
Yeah.
and it's kind of her journey through that. And then the older woman is a really feisty woman. She's in a care home at the start of the book, and we follow her kind of regaining control, I guess, over her life. So they're all really different characters and
Yeah.
different ages and different classes, and so it's really important for me to make sure that they felt different and that
Mm.
you could really feel their experiences, I guess, through their voice, but also you could like step into their shoes in a way, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to zone in on class because I really love the way that you wrote about class, specifically, reading about Lauren, who comes from, working or lower class sort of background. And I think, as you were saying before about not wanting to stereotype, I think there's often kind of misconceptions about how people like Lauren have got themselves into those positions, you know, whether they're in severe debt or whether they're on benefits. There's a lot of things that you'll hear people say that are just quite simply untrue about people that are living those experiences.
Mm.
What was important to you in terms of that representation of that experience that Lauren's going through?
Yeah, it's such a good question because that was really, really important to me to write a character that you could feel her experiences
Hmm.
as a mum. You know, she's trying her best, and as you say, like a lot of times, people who are in those difficult situations are dismissed or stereotyped. And
Yeah.
so near the beginning of the novel, she's arrested for low value shoplifting.
Hmm.
She's shoplifting, you know, out of necessity because she's getting, you know, stealing food for her kids, basically. And so many women are criminalized for kind of, I guess, like petty crime like that.
Hmm.
So I was reading Helena Kennedy's book, which is called Misjustice: How British Law is Failing Women. And she
Right,
talks about how
listening.
women have to present themselves in court. You know, it really matters. Like, we're not going to present like this, we're going to present like a good mum, or, you know, and how it really influences the sentencing and things like that. So yeah, and I think a lot of women end up in the criminal justice system because of, you know, not paying a TV license or something like
Hmm.
that. So Lauren's faces like these difficult decisions and ends up taking loans and things like that. And I just wanted you to feel that for her. I wanted you to feel like the truth of her situation, that she doesn't do this because she's not responsible or because
Hmm.
she's not intelligent. She's so sharp and she's such a strong woman, but she just is in a really difficult situation. She's,
Yeah.
you know, she's been born into this difficult situation. She hasn't got a lot of money. She's a single parent with two boys, and she's just got quite a hard life. So I wanted you to really feel that and empathize with that and like get into that rather than seeing her as a character just to dismiss and judge. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, people like that are judged a lot, are they? And she's judging herself all the time. Like, she just constantly like, I want to do this properly. She wants to be proper. She wants to be good enough. But she's always got that kind of critical voice, which is the voice like that we hear all the time from like tabloids or from, you know, in the media, of dismissing single
Yeah.
moms like often. So
Absolutely. I think actually, you know, I've known quite a few like middle class people to like steal things from shops when they like
mm,
don't really need to. And like I've known them to do that. And you just know that like when people come out with stereotyping people from
mm,
backgrounds like Lauren, you know
mm,
like how much they're looking down on them, but they're like, if only they knew how
yeah,
many people that don't need to steal do.
mm,
Um,
mm,
maybe not in the way that you would see it represented on TV, but like stealing in other ways. I don't know. Like
yeah,
it's just very interesting of like how people visualize like a criminal, and you know, like you said, she really wants to do good by her kids, and
mm,
you see, like I used to work in a school as a TA, and it was quite like a poor area.
mm,
And like the mums were like obviously so amazing with their kids, but
mm,
it was so frustrating to know that like they wanted to be able to like give more to their kids and they couldn't. And you'd have like
yeah,
conversations with them of being like, you know, like what they were doing for the kids' birthdays or whatever. And it'd be
mm,
like, oh, you know, like we're just going to do this, but we're going to try and make it as like special as they can. Like it was so important to them to like
mm,
be able to find ways to just make it work. And I think like I'm
yeah,
from like obviously a northern working class background, so I
mm,
know that whole kind of like seeing you growing up and seeing my parents like just trying to make ends
yeah,
meet and trying to make something special when it's like not always possible. Like one of my favorite memories with my mum is
mm,
eating like curries from the supermarket on a Saturday night.
mm,
We'd always get
mm,
like a curry from the supermarket and sit and watch
mm.
Casualty. And like that to
Oh, yeah,
me is like
mm,
such a special memory and such a special
yeah,
tradition. And it's like
sweet, yeah.
we were eating a curry from the supermarket, like it's not
Yeah.
it's not like anything like luxurious, but it was
Mm,
like it was about that time, and like
yeah.
she really cares about having that time with her kids, doesn't she? And
She really does. They're like
yeah.
center of her whole world. They totally are. And that is the important thing, isn't it? To have time and
Yeah.
for that parents be doing their best by their kids, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's what Lauren really is. She just wants to do right by them, and
Exactly.
that's how she ends up in all these kind of quite tricky situations. But it's because she's trying to do her best by her kids, totally. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to ask about the, just with me mentioning about like watching TV, and you open in the prologue with the three women separately watching this like labor scene on TV.
Mm.
Why did you want to open on that image?
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Nobody asked about this. I really love talking about it. This TV soap opera story that runs throughout the whole book, which nobody really asked me about.
Oh no,
But
I clocked
yeah.
that straight away.
So I mean, so partly I wanted to look at like how things are represented on TV compared to how
Yeah.
they are. So that Labour scene in the opening is quite different to the Labour the labour scenes that all those three women have experienced
Yeah.
in having babies. But also, I think there's something really about how TV brings people together, and
Mm.
it's almost like they identify with those characters in that story, and they can reflect on how their experience is different, but it brings them together with other characters and other
Yeah.
people. So the book's kind of about institutions in a way. So you've got different institutions. You've got like a care home. You've got a mother and baby unit. You've got different institutions. But there's something about the TV that really brings people
Mm.
together across institutions. And I'm interested in like what people have got in common as well as what makes them different. So I'm really interested in with those three women what they've got in common. But there's something really interesting about TV, I think, in the way that,
Mm.
whether you're in prison or if you're in a hospital or whatever, there's something about TVs that like people gather around still and that you can still access these shared stories that run throughout. So part of why I wanted that TV there is just because they're in most institutions, in a care home and wherever you are. And people gathering, it gets people talking, it gets people
Yeah.
reflecting on their own lives and you can see how that's different to the people's lives who are watching it and their reactions to it, their different reactions to it really tell you something about themselves.
For sure. I'm trying to think, like, if I find it, because that to me, like, this TV soap running throughout the book, that
Mm,
to me felt very like northern and working class. But I don't think it's just
mm,
specific to that experience. But I do think it's
mm,
a very working class thing of like knowing that you know the TV's on every night and like that's
yeah,
the entertainment for everyone. You
yeah.
know, that's the thing that I don't know, like you wouldn't be going out as much as maybe somebody
Mm,
with a lot more money would be able to do. You'd be kind of
yeah,
gathering and watching the same series every night. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. I don't know if it is just specific to that, but it did have a very like northern feel to it in the book. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know whether it is that class either, but I think like Lauren sits with her kids and they watch TV together and it brings them together and they've got that closeness that you
Yeah.
talk, the Saturday night kind of like they sit together and that's just really important. I think it's really important
Yeah.
people come together and
For sure. I do like to keep episodes spoiler free, so I'm going to
Mhm.
tread carefully here, but there are things that happen to each woman. Like strange things start to happen to these women. You know, there's like a
Mhm.
person appearing to them or a sound they can hear, these images that come to them. And I don't know how to word this because I'm trying not to give any spoilers, but could you tell us what inspired these experiences that they go through? I'm kind of putting it in your hands.
Yeah, yeah. So can I talk about the guy trash? Because then the guy trash is there from the beginning. So
Yes, yes,
yeah.
please do.
Okay, so yeah, they all do. It does have this like quite uncanny, these uncanny like supernatural type elements
Yes.
underpinning it. And I think that one of the things I really wanted to explore was how some stories that are passed on are not written down. They're like in the
Mm,
land or in the river or in the old stories that are passed on, and that a lot of women's history is not passed on through text or whatever because it's not recorded. It's kind of passed on through voices and stories. And
mm,
one of the stories I wanted to explore was this story of the Gytrash, which the Gytrash is this black dog type figure that you get that kind of creature in different cultures and different myths, don't you? But it's very specifically northern. So the Gytrash appears in Jane Eyre, and Jane is told this story by one of the servants, Bessie. So it's passed on to her orally. And this thing about the Gytrash, it's almost like it comes from the land, and when people face it, it like brings up their own darkest fears and shame. And it's not like facing a monster, it's almost like facing something internally. So all the kind of
mm.
supernatural elements are kind of about the women facing their own fears and their own experiences and trying to make sense, trying to get to the truth of like their experiences, because sometimes difficult experiences are hard to put into words, aren't there? And
Yeah.
it's like how do you capture that? And it's almost like you have to go beyond that human experience
Yeah.
to the folklore or to the yeah. So I was trying to capture something like true of their experiences really, and things that push you so hard that you're almost not yourself,
Mm.
that are either so stressful or so traumatic. It's like those things kind of push you to the edge of what might feel rational. And so I wanted to use that to explore what that might be like for them, really.
Yeah, I'm really kicking myself now because I just didn't kick up on. I genuinely thought that Guy Trash was this like ethereal woman, like it was just somebody
Mhm.
observing them from the outside, and didn't even think to look up what that meant. I just took it
Mhm.
as the name that you'd written down and thought, oh, that's just this this woman's name
No.
that they keep seeing. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, what an idiot! I didn't, and I've read Jane Eyre, so how did I not?
You don't need to read Jane Eyre to
What an
it.
idiot. Okay, well,
No, no.
that's so interesting to hear about, though. And obviously, the title is called It Comes from the River, and the river is something that all these women are drawn towards. What does the river or the water represent to you?
So all of the three women like live on the river, the different institutions on the river. It like shapes the city. So it's a northern city, but it's got like bits of all different places in
Yeah,
it. So I've got a map of it, but it's not like a real place, but it's kind of got lots of real places.
yeah.
So the river like holds that together. It holds their stories together. It's like a thread that holds them together.
Hmm.
And I think there's also something about water being, we're made of water, and
Yeah.
water's always been quite sacred, I think, like in
Hmm.
myth and in stories, and so it's something that like holds women together, and it's what they've got in common. And then you have this kind of this Gytrash, from the river it comes, to the river it always returns, and it kind of is of water. It's like a creature of water almost.
I love that. I want to ask about Alex because I found her sections really moving, and I wanted her to escape her husband from the get-go because you can
Mm.
see the flickers of signs that he's just not a good person. And again, we're having to navigate this spoiler free. But what was important to you when writing those scenes with him? Because, they have the potential to be quite traumatic, but I felt that you navigated them really well.
Oh, thank you. That's something I've thought so much about, and I really wanted to do it in a responsible way, because I really wanted to explore that coercive control and that
Mm,
really difficult relationship that she's in, that abusive relationship. But at the same time, I didn't want to use that and exploit that, in a way
yeah,
that was for entertainment. I don't know.
yeah.
I feel like when as writers, when we're writing about this kind of thing, you've got to be really careful treading that path
Mm,
between exploiting something and also or shedding light on it. So I did a lot of research, and I wanted to write it in a way that you could feel how Alex felt in her body, and but also so her sections are in the third person and
yeah.
the other two women are in the first person. And I almost couldn't write her in the first person because we register more about how difficult that or how problematic that situation is than she does at first. Like
Mm,
she knows there's flickers that it's not right, but also she can't really allow herself to think that because there's also times when it's really good, and that's how those kind of situations carry on, I guess. So yeah, in writing it, it was really important to me just to try and get a sense of not overwriting it. I
yeah.
think I tried to not make it gratuitous or exploiting of the situation, but just have like little insights or glimmers into
Mm.
how her situation was or how she felt. And so hopefully the reader feels like, oh, this is something really not right here, but
Yeah.
you can see how she's navigating that within her life as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important to represent the more like insidious abuse that, some people experience in relationships because it's not necessarily just, I don't want to say just because that's belittling it and I don't want to do that,
Mm.
but we often see representation of like a physical act of violence, but
Yeah.
actually, you know, the insidious nature of his abuse,
Mm.
it takes so much longer to recognize,
Yeah.
and like I've been in that position, so it was just really like it really resonated with me, and it
Mm.
not it wasn't nice to read that. I can't
Mm.
describe it. It was just I just don't think that experience is represented enough, and
Yeah.
I think it's important to see that side to abuse that isn't
Mm.
always represented. I
Yeah,
also think it's really
definitely.
interesting that you chose to write her in third person. Obviously, it's because we notice the abuse quicker than she notices
Mm.
it. But I was listening to Minnie Driver's podcast. I don't know if you've listened to it before, and she did an episode with Lisa Taddeo,
Right.
who obviously wrote Three Women,
Yeah.
and she was talking about Minnie had been writing something, and her editor had said to her like, "Why have you chosen to write these like sections of abuse
Mm.
in, I don't know if it was like second or third person or something?" And then she was like, "Have you tried writing it in first person?" She was like, "I want
Mm.
you to challenge you to do that." And when she
Mm.
tried to write it in first person, she realized why she'd avoided it in the first place, and it's because
Mm.
it was too much. It was too much of a visceral experience, and it brought up too much for her. And Lisa Taddeo said like, "Oh my God, like, yeah, that
Mm.
completely resonates with me." And I don't
Mm.
know if it's like a certain thing that women do. It's like too close
Mm.
to home that you kind of go, no, I need some separation there.
Yeah, yeah,
I just think that's really interesting.
that is really interesting.
Yeah,
That is interesting. And I mean, I tried to write all of them in I tried to write Alex in first person. I've tried to
yeah,
write the sections in third person. And these were just the voices that like, this was just kind of the only way I could somehow capture the truth of their
yeah.
experiences. There's something about Alex's sections that are a bit more lyrical as well and a bit more
Mm.
and that I lost that distance in the first person. So I think you still go very close to her in the third person, and I tried really hard to get, really close to that kind of third person, really close perspective. But yeah, there was just something about the first person, I just couldn't write it. That
Mm.
is such a good book, that Three Women. This book, could have been called Three Women if there were if it
Yeah,
wasn't
of
for that book.
course.
Yeah, we were like, oh, that title's gone. Lisa's got
Yeah, it is
it.
such a good book. Just with you mentioning Alex's sections being quite lyrical, which I think is so right, and you really get the sense that you're a poet because there's a lovely kind of pace and rhythm to the stories and to these voices that I've probably articulated that terribly, but you really get a sense of that. And I wanted to know what has influenced your writing style, whether that be specific books or writers. Yeah, what are
Yeah.
your influences?
Yeah. No. So I did really want this to be like it's kind of like almost a score for the Northern Voice, I think. So the poetics of it, I hope, I hope it's got like a Northern poetics,
Yeah.
and it's really important to me that rhythm is so important. So when I write, I read out, and I also pare back as much as possible so that every word's like really pulling its weight on the page.
Mm.
I think that's where the kind of the poetics have come in. But I really wanted it to be a good story as well, and
Yeah.
not for it to be, because I love like really poetic writing, but I also didn't want that to get in the way in any way of the story and connecting with it. So yeah, kind of hope to do both of those
No,
things.
it definitely
But
does. You make
yeah.
it feels really like visceral and immersive, and like you can visualize everything around them. You feel like you're in these situations with them, and I think
Mm.
that's a testament to the way that you write.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but in terms of like what I've read, so Mill on the Floss, George Eliot. I read quite a lot of like older literature. So George Eliot's Mill on the Floss really influences this book, and Jane Eyre, Bronte's Jane Eyre. I also love books like Daisy Johnson's Everything Under.
I've not read any Daisy Johnson
Oh,
yet.
it's so good.
Yeah.
And also Emma Glass's book, Rest and Be Thankful. So those books have got like a similar like presence, like when people push to the very edge, there's
Mm.
almost like a similar presence there, like a darkness or a kind of a madness or a shadow of like something that's not quite human. So I really loved those books. Yeah, and I also love, I read really widely. I read like modernist women's short stories like Virginia Woolf and Catherine Mansfield and stuff. So I love the way that they use colour and image, and
Yeah.
it's really pared back. And so I kind of, yeah, I love I read really widely, and I think try and combine. I try not to just read contemporary stuff,
Yeah.
even though I love it, because I think I've learned a lot from like older writers, and especially women. I read a lot of women writers. In fact, I
Yeah.
mainly read women
Oh, me
now.
too. Me too. It's becoming a problem. I
Yeah.
definitely need to. I mean, I read so much contemporary stuff, obviously for the podcast,
Mm,
but because I see stuff that's kind of pitched to me, or I just tend to be around like contemporary fiction quite a lot, and
mm,
I find it really hard to like be like, Hannah, no, you need to go back and read an older book. So
mm,
I'm trying to make a conscious effort to do that, but I only
mm,
read Mrs. Dalloway for the first time last year, which is just
mm.
crazy. And you learn so much, and you can see how those works have influenced so many different contemporary authors. So actually, it's
Yeah.
great to look back and read those works because it makes you
Mm.
read contemporary stuff in a completely different light.
Yeah, massively, massively. And I mean, it is a problem of time because there's so many good books to
There's
read.
so
It's
many.
hard to, yeah, it's hard to find enough time. But yeah, I really like those short stories, like, because like the modernist short stories,
Mm.
like by people like Virginia Woolf, because they don't take very long to read, but it means you can like immerse yourself just for, I mean, some of her short stories are just a page, but they're just so amazing, like
Oh,
so
really?
stunning uses of image and yeah, color. Yeah, Wolf's amazing. I could keep going back.
I love that. I'm gonna have to try some of her short stories because I shamefully didn't get on very well with Mrs. Dalloway.
Yeah.
So I need to
Well,
try something else. I can't just taint her with that.
short stories.
Yeah, I'll give that a try.
Very true.
I also need to read some Daisy Johnson because my friend, who's also an author, Emma, she has been trying to get me to read Daisy Johnson for ages. So I've
Oh,
got like
so
two of her
good.
books that I borrowed from her, and I'm like, I need
Have
to get to those. Yeah.
you? Fen, I think, is it Fen? That's the short
Fen,
story. Fen's
I've got
good.
Fen, and I've got is it Sisters?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's called Sisters. Yeah, I've got
Yeah,
that one
yeah.
as well. I think that's a novel though, but
Yeah, it
Fen's
is. I
short
got that from the
stories, yeah.
library, actually. But,
Yeah, I'm gonna give Fen a try next. I
yeah.
obviously loved your book, and for the listeners, I'm gonna pop a link in the show notes to buy yourselves a copy. Please do. This is such a wonderful book, and like you said before, Rachel, like I could definitely have read a novel of each each of these women. I love reading about them, and I think you write characters so well, and you write Northern characters so well, which
Oh,
I
thanks. Oh, you're
absolutely
so
loved.
kind. Thank
But
you.
before I let you go, I do like to finish on a recommendation. So no pressure. What would you like to recommend?
Okay. Okay, so I find this really difficult, but I'm gonna recommend Fionn Mosley's Elmet. I don't know if
Yes,
you've read it, because I
I've
love,
not.
yeah, and I found when I first read the first page of that, I found it really hard to get into, and then when I read it, I just think it is stunning, like absolutely stunning, and I just love the lyricism, love the images. I just think the way that she writes is just amazing, and I've learned a lot from that book, I think, so it's really beautiful.
I'll
So
have to
go
add
read
that
that.
to my list.
Yeah.
Was that on the women's prize list a while ago?
Oh, I think it probably was.
I
It did
feel
win.
like it was.
It
I
did.
don't know.
It did get some prize. Did it?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not sure. It did get prizes, but
yeah, he did get
really
prizes.
beautiful. Really beautiful. Yeah, prizes of some sort.
And I'm waiting for your book to get all the prizes because it
Well,
deserves them. So we'll
let's
see.
see.
But thank you so much for chatting to me today, Rachel. I've
Thank
loved
you.
chatting to you.
Yeah,
And as I
total
said,
pleasure. Thank you.
thank you. And I loved your book. And as I've said for the listeners, go buy yourselves a copy of this book. It's amazing. I'm going to pop a link in the show notes, and I'll be popping links to Rachel's other work in the show notes as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. Rachel, where can they follow you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram. It's Rachel E. Bauer on Instagram.
Thank you so much again, Rachel, and thank you so much, listeners, for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks.